Welcome to My Favorite CX, a podcast that celebrates exceptional customer experiences. To listen to today's, please choose from one of the following options.
Welcome to My Favorite Customer Experience. This week I'm joined by Lindsay from Astor Business Centers. Anthony, welcome.
I'm glad to be here, Chris. Good to see you again.
And you. And Anthony, if you've not met him, is a thought leader and a keynote speaker who started out in the financial sector working for a range of tier one banks before turning his attention to helping startups be more successful. He helps startups and side hustlers to achieve their first 100,000. And he hosts events both in person and virtually to help people achieve this. Anthony, why don't you tell us a little bit more about how you do this and what you do?
Yeah, so what I realized after working for banks for a long time, since I was 19, working for banks, I realized that a lot of people want to start a business and a lot of people fail at business for the same reasons. And that created an industry where people will sell a various specific service. So like my wife, it might be branding or it might be, sales strategies. But then I also realized that none of those things are a silver bullet, that no one discipline can really give you the foundation you need to start a business. So I started to focus on small businesses and startups, primarily negative 6 months to 12 months in business, and showing them all the fundamentals. So not just one thing where, they're signing up for a course and now they have great branding, but they don't have a good customer service strategy or they don't have a good feedback strategy. So I came up with the whole idea of helping people run a data-driven business with 4 pillars, being scalable, sustainable, repeatable, and franchisable.
Very cool. And I think in that you talked about being able to provide a customer service as well. And I think in the entrepreneur space, there is a lot of scope for providing an exceptional customer experience still. It's not a case of only the big players can do it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think growing up in the States, that whole idea of the customer's always right, I haven't necessarily always seen that transfer over to the UK. And as well, I just think after COVID, it just feels like things have been really different as far as the level of service that you get from companies. And even some companies desire to provide an excellent customer service.
And I guess working with you, entrepreneurs can find a way of maybe providing that exceptionality and differentiating themselves with the services they offer.
Yeah, and just understanding that it is important in a world where people have a lot of choices, the customer service experience, the desire to do what's best for and by your customers, and the willingness to take feedback. Because one of the things that I learned very early when I moved back to the UK is the saying where they say, British people moan, they don't complain. So I'd be out with my friends and we'd get bad service and the waiter or waitress would come over and I'd be ready, not in a rude way, but I'd be ready to give them some feedback. And everyone's like, no, 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 it was excellent. It was brilliant. And then as soon as the waiter walks away, they're like, oh, that sucked. So I think being able to, as a business, take the feedback, good and bad, and then be able to iterate and make your company better that other customers don't have that same bad experience if it was bad feedback.
Makes a lot of sense. And you talked about using data to help drive these businesses. And I know from following your work, you're a big fan of AI. And where would you see maybe the biggest opportunities to excel as an entrepreneur with AI in particular?
Well, the thing is, I think that AI, I focus a lot on ChatGPT. That's the books that I've written. I think that it's leveling the playing field. So it gives us access to tools, information, and resources that before you'd have to pay someone for. Now, let me just caution people. I'm experienced and someone like Chris is experienced. So it's not about using it to replace using your brain. But it now means like if I'm trying to come up with a customer service survey, I can lean on AI and say, well, I'm in this type of business. What are some questions that I could ask to glean what people feel about my business. So it's using it as a tool and not a crutch.
I think that that's a big thing. I was chatting to someone recently and they said, well, what we use AI for is we have the idea and we have the idea to 30%, and then AI will do the 30 to maybe 80 or 90% of the thinking now,
Yes.
and then we finesse it. And I look at it as AI is there to potentially help make your life easier. It's not there to replace what you do. You still have to provide the human touch. There are certainly aspects of life that you can certainly automate. I mean, we're on a Zoom call here, for example, and if this was a regular meeting, then coming off the end of this, as much as I'm a copious notes taker and I've got piles of notebooks next to me and I still can't get out of that habit, being able to, within a couple of minutes, have a summary of this is what happened, these are your actions, that's huge. And
Yes.
just finding the right tools, and there are a number of AI directories out there that I'm sure you're pointing people to find that.
Yeah, and for me as a business owner, and it might be the same thing for you, Chris, you didn't start your business to spend less time with the people you care about. So the ability to have a tool that can give you time back, that you can then do a great job, provide a great service to your clients, but also have more time to spend with the people that you care about. That's what excites me so much about the proposition of AI.
Absolutely. And we'll ponder that thought as we now go into a break. We're going to place our listeners on hold, and we'll be back in just a short moment.
I'm Halsey, your AI-powered favorite experience agent. I can see you've contacted us previously, so I'm loading up your favorite hold music now, whilst we connect you to the team.
Welcome back to my favorite customer experience. I'm here with Anthony Lindsay of Asta Business Centers. And beforehand, we were talking about how Anthony helps support entrepreneurs and startups to really excel at growing their business and find various different tools so that they can be more successful and have a better work-life balance. Now, Anthony, we're going to ask you about a customer experience of yours. So please tell us one of your favorite customer experiences.
And this is one that I'm so proud to be able to talk about because I think it honors the company. So when I had first moved to the the UK from the US, I had dreadlocks, right? So, and I was still in that kind of like hip hop mode. And my brother took me to go get some suits, right? Because I'm transitioning into a new career, etc. And he took me to a place called Slater's. Have you ever been to Slater's, Chris?
I have, and I frequently go back.
Yes. So I went in there. So I'm this guy, dreadlocks, baggy clothes, and the level of service that I received was exceptional. So it was that level of they didn't look at how I looked. They viewed me as a client and as a customer. So they measured me for the suit. Then they were like, would you like some shirts? We can introduce you to, like you'd say, Chris. So they actually did a proper handover to the next individual. And the I was just blown away by the service. But sometimes you go places and there's an individual that gives you great service because that's within their DNA. But obviously, after receiving that level of service, I went, as you said, Chris, I went back again and again, and it's been consistent. And years later, I don't live in Birmingham where I went originally. Years later, I went back into the Slaters. And not only, and I'm not making this up because there's really no reason to make this up. I was complimenting the individual that was serving me. I was complimenting him on the level of service that we get at Slater's. And because my brother tends to frequent that, he remembers my brother and he remembers me, which that the other side of that maybe people wouldn't pick up on if I didn't highlight it is they're retaining staff. So they're delivering a great service. The people enjoy being there to the extent that they're staying there 10, 15 years. So that is my probably top customer service story. And it's not the end of the story, it's a continual story because I've always received great service at Slater's.
I can echo it. And actually, the moment you mentioned it, I remembered back to 20 years ago when my uncle first recommended it to me. And yeah, they're not a regular store. They're not on the high street. They're normally above the high street, somewhere hidden away. And it's just a huge room of suits. And yeah, I went back when our boys wanted suits for our wedding many years ago. We went back, and it's one of those places. But then when they got a bit older, it was time for college. Off we went again. Yeah, you're right. It's one of those places that you go back to again and again because they just seem to do the right things well,
Yes.
and over deliver, if anything.
Yes. Yeah. And it seemed like you want to be somewhere again when you have choices, when retail is dying out because of online service, you want to be somewhere that they view you as a valued customer and they're willing to go above and beyond because that's what they do. Is it like I never felt like they were trying to upsell me or cross sell me or get me to spend more money than I had. I just felt like they were like, this is someone we value. We want him to look great and we want him to make informed choices.
And I think that's a big thing because whenever I've been there, I've generally had to wait a little while for service. But even then, it's been worth the wait. And even when I've been served, I never then feel like I'm being rushed because they need to get to the next customer. It's like you are that person's most important person when you're there. Um, and you talked about a little bit about how it makes you feel. I'm going to ask, does it influence your behaviors? I mean, you said you went back after a number of years. Are you finding yourself recommending them as well?
Absolutely. That's why I'm talking about them now. You know, the moment I think of suits, I think of Slater's. The moment I think and good value as well. Because I've been other places and had, probably spent more and needed something from them, but not feeling like, oh, they value my money. So yeah, I'm an advocate all day, and um, I learned a lot from that as well. Just as a business owner and as someone who's a business leader, I learned a lot about, getting the right staff. And if I might indulge on another story, is that all right?
Yeah,
So like
absolutely.
in the States, there's a fast food place called Chick-fil-A, right? And Chick-fil-A is, to me, it sits somewhere between Nando's and KFC. But one of the values of Chick-fil-A is when you say thank you to them for something, they say it's my pleasure. So I've always loved Chick-fil-A. Their food is amazing. Anyway, I took my wife to the States, took her to one of the Chick-fil-A after ranting and raving about Chick-fil-A. And when they recognized her British accent, they were like, "Oh, you're from England, etc." Gave her a free meal. But then my wife and I were talking about that customer service experience. And one of the things I said to her, I was like, I'm not sure that this could work in the UK because I think they'd struggle to get people to consistently stick to that brand value of saying, it's my pleasure. Because if you don't have the right staff that are going to do the thing because A, it's the right thing, B, it's part of the branding. If you're going to have staff who are going to say, well, I think it's corny, or I just don't see why we would have to say it. Even with the best intent, you're not going to be able to deliver that service. So I learned as a business owner and as a business leader, it's more than just the hard skills. You have to bring people into your business that have the soft skills and the people that are willing to make your customers feel valued.
I mean, I think we're going to be getting Chick-fil-A in the UK pretty soon. So we'll have to reconvene on one of these to find out what the experience is like. I would concur. I had one. I mean, it was an airport Chick-fil-A, so I don't know if that means it was slightly worse, or slightly better. But I had one on a layover a few years back and was very impressed with the experience. And it was one of those where it was like ingrained in my mind of these guys are good. I should go there.
Yeah.
Um, I think you're right. In the UK, we do struggle with, especially if we think something's corny. I'm a proud advocate of sarcasm, but I also I've learned, and it takes time, and you evolve. Of like when people say, when I first went to the States in the US, in Florida in 2000, I was a not quite 18-year-old, very sarcastic, trying to find my way in the world, and I couldn't handle um, the hospitality in Florida and the have a nice day. I'm like, no one means this. No one means it at all. But actually now, like over 20 years, sadly, later, when people say have a nice day or have a great day here, I find myself like, I don't just brush it off now. I'm like trying to respond and say, yeah, and you,
Yeah.
have a great day too. And you realize actually it's those little interactions that they do make the difference. And
Yeah.
I think you're right in that we're still growing up culturally in terms of our customer experience over here, in that actually those added measures do make a difference. They do become the things that you remember a brand by and an experience by.
Yeah. And you can make that person's day as well. Because for
Yeah.
me, I understand. My very first job was at McDonald's, and I understand the other side of it as well. Like you're going in there to do your very best, and you're treating the person well. And some people won't even say good morning, good afternoon, or thank you. So I make it a point when I'm engaging in most situations, I'll say, "How are you today?" Because it also breaks them up from that next, 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 just by asking that one question or complimenting them. I'm a big fan because I understand, NPS and all of that. I understand that people are more likely to complain than to compliment. So when I do receive a good service, or I was in a card shop the other day, I asked for a particular category of card. And what I was really impressed by with the young lady is she didn't just say it's over there. She's like, let me show you where that is. And so I took the time to say, you know what? That's a great thing that you've just done, and pointed out to her. Because my grandmother used to say, encouragement sweetens labor. So it's one of those things that you can pay it forward by saying something nice to that person. It makes them want to continually do it. And then it can help improve the overall customer experience.
Absolutely. On an earlier episode, I did set the challenge for listeners to call into a contact center just to tell people what a great service they provide. I've not had any correspondence yet, other than friend of the show, Mike Pacey, did say, "Oh, I'm not sure I'd want to queue for 20 minutes." But if it's a really good service,
Yeah.
do it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Anthony, where can people find you if they want to learn more? You've got a book out at the moment, Business Mastery for Startups and Side Hustlers.
Yeah, so that was probably the second book I did after the ChatGPT book. It's available on Amazon. And as I said, it's about giving you all of the key fundamentals, because quite often you don't know what you don't know. So this will introduce you to the concepts around mindsets, around customer experience, around CRMs. So you now know. That way, as you're building your business, you have the right foundation that is solid. And then when you go to someone maybe for branding or for sales support or coaching, you actually value their service more because you understand how it's going to benefit your business. So you can get the book on Amazon, and you can find me on LinkedIn. So that's Anthony Lindsay with an A. So Lindsay. I'm the guy with the blue background. And I love having these type of conversations. So thank you so much, Chris. And I know you personally do a lot around the customer service experience and making business owners' lives better by giving them access to better data and managing those aspects of what they do a lot better.
And what we'll do is we'll put some notes in the show notes with some links. We'll put a QR code up. So don't worry if you didn't catch that spelling. There'll be a QR code probably at this time where you can just scan it and connect to Anthony that way. Anthony, thank you very much for joining us on My Favorite Customer Experience.
Thanks, Chris. This was my favorite podcast.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Take care.
Thank you for listening to My Favorite CX. Your listenership is important to us. On your keypad, please press a number between 1 and 5 to rank how much you've enjoyed your experience.